All right. Okay, ready? All right. Gotta pull up my socks. Hey everyone, we're back with Mike Peterson, one of our solution engineers, and the topic today is tech debt or technology debt. So I wanted to first start off with, Mike, what's a good definition for technical debt, and why do we care?
So technical debt it's essentially building complexity into a solution. And that complexity, in the moment as you're developing a solution, you're putting features in, you're putting things in. Oftentimes after the fact though, you want to go and extend that solution.
Okay.
Or something goes wrong and you need to troubleshoot it, or you need to update it to take advantage of new technologies. And there is such a technical burden that's left over because of how it was put in that it becomes very difficult to be able to extend or update your solutions. And it's called debt because it's not there right away necessarily, right? You've incurred a debt, you've amassed some debt, and at some point in the technology world, you're going to have to pay that debt back.
Right. So can you avoid technical debt or tech debt, or is it something we have to live with?
I don't think that technical debt is something that you can say, I want zero of it, right? It's sort of like like personal debt in your life.
Right.
Like when you buy a house, you have a mortgage and you incur some debt. And that's something that is encouraged, right?
Yeah.
You buy a house within your means, you have a payment, you pay it off over time, you're able to manage that debt so you can acquire more resources, it doesn't become a huge burden, and you're able to kind of bring that along, right, in your life.
Yeah.
If you went and got a house that was way outside your price range, and you're putting all your resources into paying for that, then that's all you've got, and you can't update it at all. If you said, hey, I want to put in, remodel a bathroom. Well, I don't have the money for that. I'm trying to pay my debt back.
So they call that house poor, so you can't do anything else. And I guess the technology side of it is you're spending all your time managing what you've already put in that you can't do anything new, right?
Exactly. But the key there is that you're always going to have some debt as you grow. It's at the beginning when you're first implementing things, looking at it and saying, first of all, identifying the debt, and then saying, is this worth it, right? Down the road, what might I run into by doing this? And is it worth it to me to have to pay that debt at some point? Okay,
so we know what tech debt is. We know that it's kind of a necessary thing, and you want to right size it. So how do you establish an approach where you can make sure that the debt is manageable for the size organization?
Right, and to be clear, the goal would always be zero.
Okay, yeah.
Right. I mean, you're always wanting it to be as low as possible. I don't want to make that, but you will incur some.
Yeah, the reality is that,
and it's not a bad thing, right? You're not necessarily trying to target zero, just trying to keep it low. As far as how to do that though, it's actually very difficult, I think, because when you're implementing, in our line of work, right, implementing new processes, you have a process that you need to design and build. There are a lot of requirements that come in, a lot of features, a lot of nice to haves. The technical team, in the moment, you have a full understanding of everything that's going on in that solution. You know all of the features you're putting in. You have it all in your head.
Yeah.
And I kind of liken this to meeting notes, right?
Okay.
When you write notes during a meeting, very often right after the meeting, you're going to look at those notes and go, I know exactly what that meeting was about. I know about all the technologies we talked about, the processes. What happens if you put down those notes and go back 6 months later and just look at your notes and you go, what did we talk about? It's just chicken scratch now. Or even worse, even worse, you send those notes to someone else and say, hey, can you do something with this? And you provide no other context, just your notes.
Mhm.
They're not gonna have a clue what your notes meant.
Yeah.
So in the moment, as you're writing those notes, you have a thorough understanding,
Mhm.
and immediately thereafter, you have a good recall of it. So the same thing happens with the technical teams. You're in the moment, you understand all of the concepts, everything going on. You go, well, this will be no problem. It's hard to kind of pull yourself out of that mindset and look at it, kind of step away and say, in 6 months, I wrote all this custom code for something. In 6 months, am I gonna be able to go back and fix, or am I gonna be able to extend what I did? Is someone else going to be able to come in
Mhm.
and interpret that? Code, processes, all of that.
Got it.
Um,
So what about scope though? I mean, scope's got to play. So that is like the serviceability aspect of it, right?
Right.
And I imagine architecture and architecting it right. But what about the right sizing the application and its feature set to the problem? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so that's actually that's a very multi-layered question, right? Because we talked about the technical side of it.
Yes.
There's more decision making that has to go on
Mhm.
in that, right? Because as a technical team, right, you're implementing the features, and that's usually being driven by the business and all that, right?
Mhm.
So there's technical team, there's the people managing the technical team, and then usually there's a business sponsor or an executive sponsor, someone who's kind of going through that. So one of the first facets of that is having a proper channel to communicate what the debt is and work that way up the chain
Okay.
so that debt can be properly assessed
Yeah.
and features properly assessed and determine, is that something we want to take on? Is this worth having that debt? Is this feature worth having that debt? Helping facilitate that, though, on the other side, as you pointed out, scope.
Mhm.
A lot of organizations are switching to the agile methodology,
Okay.
away
Yeah.
from the waterfall
Mhm.
mentality, right? So in a waterfall scenario, we're more likely to say, here's all the requirements and everything
Yeah.
that I need, and we're gonna put a timeline on it. We need to be seeing the ROI. We need to see the return on our investment.
Mhm.
We need to get this in quickly. Quick often correlates to technical debt.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right.
The
Okay.
faster you say, hey, I need to get this implemented, and okay, we're gonna put this thing together really fast.
You cut corners.
Yeah, you cut corners.
You don't design. You don't document it
You
correctly.
don't document it. Exactly.
Okay.
So you're trying to get it in fast, it all goes in, and then, it works great. And then a year later, 2 years down the road, you go, this is a mess. We got to upgrade the system. We got a new line of business system to integrate with. And now it's a mess because we've handicapped ourselves. It's going to take
Right.
a long time, a lot of resources. With the agile methodology, though, they have the concept of minimum viable product.
Okay. Yes.
And that's really looking at gathering all of your features. What's everything we could want?
Mhm.
And then going through that and saying, but what do we need today to make this functional? What's the minimum? What's critical? Getting those features in and getting a process in place with the minimum number of features needed,
Mhm.
that you can start getting that return on investment.
Yeah.
But also keeping in mind that there's a lot of other things we're going to want. How can we go later and fit those things in? We talk about phases, phase 1, phase 2. Instead of looking at a project going, well, I'm just gonna have phase 1 and, phase 2, we'll talk about that, down the road. No, I like the concept as someone who puts in systems of saying, we're working on a phase 1
Mhm.
and we already have a phase 2 lined up. I'm immediately going to roll into, okay, this next feature, that's the one that's deemed the most critical. We're gonna work on that and we're going to deploy it up, right? Next feature, work on it, put it up, and you're no longer in that rush mode necessarily
Mhm.
because you're already getting
Right.
that benefit
Right.
from your solution.
And you can also get feedback. And you
Exactly.
can monitor the process and see whether those features that were critical were actually critical.
That is something that we find quite often is that, you know, we put stuff in and a lot of times there's features that just turn out
Yeah,
they're not used.
nice to have.
Yeah, and you know, for us especially, we come in and put in a process and it's usually new. When you have a new process,
Mhm.
there's a lot of ideas that are out there that
Yeah.
once you get that new process in, maybe it's not relevant anymore. You know, maybe the users aren't actually going to use it. Maybe there's something we haven't thought of over here, you know, as you do business. So a lot of those features are never, you know, actually used. So by looking at what's absolutely critical and putting that in and then evaluating, you know,
Mhm.
okay, we've talked to our users a month later and this is really needed.
Got it.
Okay, we'll put that in. You know, that's
That's-
sort
yeah.
of rolling out, evaluating, and doing that instead of trying to put everything in and doing it quickly.
Mhm.
And as you said, cutting corners, documentation, you know, at every layer. So that sort of mentality, a short-term strategy, getting your ROI,
Mhm.
and then a long-term strategy of, okay, we have a wish list. Let's get this wish list in.
Got it. So you know, if I were to summarize, you know, technical debt, while we always try to shoot for zero, it's just the reality of things, just like any kind of debt. Take your time, don't rush, be more agile, bite-sized chunks,
Exactly.
focusing on what you really need as target one and get it out there and start getting that ROI, and then monitor, and have these things as phases is pretty much it.
Yeah, and the important thing is, you know, having those next phases already
Yeah.
queued up,
Got it.
right? Because you're gonna get to the end of phase one and everyone's just gonna sit back and breathe.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is going to pop up. And you're going to start doing that.
So always
And-
plan
and
for
phase-
evolving, right?
And
Yeah.
the phase two, you know, okay, well, that's no longer critical. Now there's always something critical.
Well, and
There's
that's
never not
true.
a critical thing
Right,
that needs to
yeah.
be done, right? So if you haven't already planned that, haven't already had the discussions, already started it, then you get your first phase in, the next critical thing's already there that's totally unrelated, and you're not, you know,
That's
all of a sudden
life.
it just falls off to the wayside, and you're starting back at square one again, you know,
Okay.
2 years later.
Well, there you have it. Sage-like practical advice from our solution engineer, Mike Peterson. So thank you very much.
Been a pleasure.
That's a wrap. That's so easy. This is so easy.